Today's episode is brought to you by shop.mrcolionnoir.com. Shop.mrcolionnoir.com is the place for all of your two-way apparel needs, with designs like I Am the Militia, Keep Texas Tactical, and I Lost All My Guns in a Boating Accident. You can show your two-way pride while looking good doing it, and even converting some folks along the way. So head over to shop.mrcolionnoir.com and grab your two-way merch today. What's going on, folks? It's Colion Noir, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Colion Noir podcast. And joining me on this episode of the podcast is Ava, who is a firearms instructor. She is a YouTuber, a gun reviewer. She has her own podcast. She basically is a Jackie of all trades. That being said, if you're listening to this only in audio form, this really doesn't matter. But if you're watching this on YouTube, understand that we decided to add a video element this time and do a virtual video, but the Zoom was acting kind of wonky and I was trying to cut back. I thought it would cut back and forth between Ava and I as we spoke. It didn't do that. So the vast majority of the video is of Ava, which I'm pretty sure most of you all are really gonna have a problem with. So let's jump right into the 5th episode of the Colion Noir podcast with Ava. So let's just go ahead and just dive right into it and just introduce yourself. And for all the people who know you and don't know you, let them know you.
All right. So my name's Ava Flanell, and I am a firearms instructor of 7 years. I have the podcast Gun Funny, which is going on almost 3 years now. I started another podcast called Basic American Podcast. I also own, I'm partners of Trigger Brew, which is a coffee, beef jerky, and energy company. And then I have like a YouTube channel, and yeah, I'm basically all over within the industry.
Quite the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So how did you get into guns initially? Because that's usually, 21 questions that we usually have to ask is to get, and it's not that it's not important. It's just, I'm pretty sure you've been asked that question a million times, but how did you get started in the guns? And then how did you kind of make your way into the gun industry?
Well, so I think a lot of people, even my students typically ask how I got into guns, because it's still rare to see a female, firearms instructor, even in the gun industry, unfortunately. But I never would have thought that I'd be doing this. So if you told me 8 years ago that I would be doing this, like never in a million years would I believe it. I only shot my first gun 8 years ago. So previously, I was living in New York City, working for the New York Yankees. I had like a nice little life, I wasn't anti-gun, but I really had no interest in guns. And I think, at that time you're just kind of young and dumb and you're just like, oh, nobody needs guns, or, like I'm in New York City and I feel safe, but really you're just ignorant.
New York is the last
So my parents, they owned a gun store, and my mom was a firearms instructor, and we were shooting a TV show. This company wanted to shoot a TV show with my parents' business, and they wanted to get on camera my mom teaching me how to shoot, because they knew that I had never shot before. So my mom just gives me like quick little tips, and I couldn't even load the gun. Like, it was kind of a disaster in the beginning, but then as I was shooting, I shot really well. And everyone was just like, are you sure this is your first time? Because I was just super accurate. And then, unfortunately, within that same week, my mom passed away due to a horrible accident. And so at that point, I moved back to Colorado, which is where I was from and where my family lived. And my mom, so within my parents' business, my mom was always the one that pretty much did like all of the paperwork, like all of the legal stuff, everything behind the business, whereas like my dad was just kind of the face of it. So without my mom there, we were just not only dealing with, her loss, but also, how to run this business. Like, they had multiple businesses. So I moved back, and I was determined to learn like everything I possibly could. And within that same year, for whatever reason, I just decided like, maybe I could become an instructor, because I quickly realized there weren't a lot of resources for women, and me, trying to learn more about guns and practice and stuff like that. They're just, all I saw were male instructors. And so that was like probably a little over 7 years ago. And then I started my own business, and it's taken off ever since.
Nice. So I want to go back to something you said at the beginning of what you stated. But before I do that, I feel like there's a smudge on my lens. So I'm going to wipe it off real quick.
Okay.
I'm looking at it and I'm like, that looks like a smudge. Yeah, much better. Let's get that 4K quality, even though this is recorded in 4K because you can't stream in 4K, but that's another story. All right. You mentioned something about there not being a lot of women in the gun industry.
Mhm.
Why do you think that is? I'm pretty sure there's some stereotypical reasons why, but why do you, from your experience and your perspective, why do you think that there aren't that many women in the gun industry?
I think that, I mean, I honestly think generally most women aren't really interested.
Okay.
And the only way that they typically, what piques their interest is more if they take it up for safety reasons. But there's not a lot of females in the industry that are taking it up for hobby or, just want to like go out and make a career around, something that's predominantly, male dominated.
You think
Male dominated.
because it's male dominant that they're not really interested, or just they're just inherently not interested in shooting?
No, I just think that, I don't want to sound sexist, but I think that there's certain jobs that, are just,
Like,
that male and female, they both kind of.
you can talk freely here. This is the one platform I have that allows just complete expression of freedom.
Well, I think that, like women just naturally flock to like other things. Like personally, I never thought that I'd be doing this. Like I would have thought I have some great job, New York City. Like even before this, all I did was wear suits. I had to literally like buy an entire new, wardrobe just living back in Colorado. So I think that women just they're just interested in other things.
Yeah.
And that's typically what I've seen is when people, decide to take up training, it's mostly for safety reasons.
Yeah, I think there's some um, parallels between the idea of, say, for instance, someone growing up in the city versus someone growing up in the sticks, or,
Hmm.
in the rural areas of America. I was a city boy, so for me, firearm ownership was either kind of closeted in this very particular aspect. You either a cop or a criminal. Um, but whereas people who kind of grew up in a rural environment, they hunted. Guns were just kind of part of their life. So for me, in a lot of ways, I never really thought I'd be into guns the way that I am either, because it
Hmm.
largely wasn't that much of an interest to me. And I think maybe there's some crossover, some parallel, I guess, so to speak, between the idea of women just inherently not being interested in it because it's considered to be the man thing to do. Um,
Well, I also, just to kind of interrupt you, like I've met people that grew up in those, rural areas, and typically it's their father will train their brothers, their sons, but they don't train the females.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Why do you think that is? That's it's a heavy question, but why do you think, from a historical perspective, or if there is even a historical perspective or cultural perspective, why do you think that there's this tendency towards kind of pigeonholing the firearm ownership into the male category and not so much women category? Do
Well,
you
I
think?
mean, just even going back, like the male typically, years ago was the provider. They would do the hunting. The female, she was at home, doing
But
all of that stuff. So I think that it just I think it trickles down to that.
yeah, but the odd thing about that is, I would think, considering how we've had this, what are we like in the 912,000th wave of feminism right now?
Yeah.
You would think with this female empowerment movement, I don't say that mockingly, but you would think with the so-called female empowerment movement pushed by
Mhm.
feminists, you would think there would be this like massive surge of those type of women, embracing firearm ownership. I know from my perspective, I don't see that. I actually see quite the opposite. I feel like there's this, yeah, empower me in ways that really aren't empowerment. But then like the more tangible aspects of empowerment, they don't really want to touch. We'll leave that for the government or some shit like that.
Mhm.
Do you think there's any validity or truth in that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah, because for me, I don't know. It just seems weird. I would think that they would just flock.
Yeah.
It would be kind of, women bursting through the doors. Give me a gun, right? But you don't really see that. Now, how much of that do you think stems from just society in terms of still pushing that narrative? Like, oddly enough, because, you talked about people growing up in a rural environment, but then the father teaching the son how to shoot, not so much the girls. But then when you fast forward into this so-called progressive time that we live in now, you don't see them pushing that. You almost see that, you almost see them trying to keep women away from the idea of firearm ownership. Now, you lived in New York for some time. Now, I don't know how closely you watched or were involved in the conversation about firearms at all, but what was the sentiment when you were in New York, outside of your own, with respect to firearms among women there?
Well, I think just firearms in general in New York are difficult for anyone to obtain.
Mhm.
And just because, it's extremely strict. And if they did, I would, having a female, own a gun it's almost kind of unheard of.
Yeah. Yeah, which is still, like I said, even weird to me. But so now we are in a time, like within the space that we are in now with, and I mean the gun industry when I talk about the space that we're in now,
Mhm.
where do you see the industry going from a female-centered standpoint? What have you seen in terms of any changes, if any at all?
Well, just in a short period of time, there's definitely been a lot more women, getting involved. I think it's like 40% of new gun owners are women. So there's definitely, women are definitely starting to, come over to the side.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of manufacturers that are just like doing whatever they possibly can to cater to women. Unfortunately, they don't really know how to do that because even within their company, it's mostly predominantly male. So it's like, what do we do? Okay, make the gun pink, and
I'll say something here about that because I know where you're going, because I've had this discussion before. It's y'all fault. Just like y'all killed chivalry. Y'all killed, yeah, it's your fault that our first idea is to go to colored guns. And here's why. Throughout my time of firearm ownership, anytime I talked to a girl who wasn't really into guns, the first thing they would say is this. I mean, maybe if like it was a cute little pink gun or something like that. So like, let's just be honest.
it's
From my perspective, that's what I've seen. That's what I get. It's like, okay, I might like guns if it was like pink and cute and stuff like that. So that's where we get it from. So when
and
our first thought process is get them pink guns, and there you go. That's where that comes from.
And it's true. I mean, it's true to a degree. Initially starting out, and I even fell victim of that. I think I had my first gun was purple. I did have a pink revolver, and now it's like, don't even give me anything that's, any girly thing. But I think that maybe it is the colors that might get them started or make that purchase.
Mm.
But then they're like, oh, this gun actually kind of sucks. Like, even though it's, it's pretty, it doesn't really operate that well. And so then moving forward, they want something that's more, that functions better. And at that point, then I think that manufacturers really struggle.
Yeah. So from your perspective, since you do train a lot of women,
Mhm.
what are some of the more unique aspects of firearm ownership for women that a lot of us men tend to overlook, or just people in general, when it comes to teaching women how to shoot?
Well, I mean, so even just recently, actually last night, somebody commented on one of my YouTube videos because I must have said that the grip is a little abrasive and it kind of hurts my hands. And so they made a comment. They were like, well, if your hands are so sensitive, you shouldn't be shooting a gun, which was, I mean, idiotic. But um, I don't think that men take into account. I mean, most men, even if you have a desk job, you're still doing stuff around the house, or, like you're not as, like, you're still rough to a degree. So you're going to have callous hands. And that's something that a lot of guys don't really consider. I know why you would want to make the grip, kind of why they'd want to texture the grip, but you also have to think, like, if you're gearing it towards women, most women are going to have sensitive hands. Like, our skin's going to be more sensitive.
I want them to. I don't understand this fascination with creating overly hard women. Like the idea that you shouldn't be able to shoot a gun because your hands are sensitive is funny to me.
Don't even get me started. I like went after this guy. Like
Oh,
if
please.
somebody writes stuff like that, I will not hesitate to put them in their place.
Well, what was your response?
So I said that, so what, like all women who have sensitive, or not all women, I said, so anybody who has sensitive hands, they shouldn't have a gun. So their lives don't matter. They shouldn't be able to protect themselves. And I was like, I don't even know why you're on my page when obviously you're not a Second Amendment advocate.
So did they end up responding to you at all?
No,
No.
no.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not a fan of that. I like I said, I like women to be women, capable, but nonetheless women. And,
Yeah.
and so for me, I do struggle a little bit with giving advice to women about the first gun they should buy, because I forget sometimes that my hand strength isn't necessarily going to be equal to, say, your hand strength. Well,
Mhm.
your hand strength may not be equal to mine. And so me racking a 19 is nothing. Whereas,
Yeah.
someone else, they're like, I'm struggling with this. And I'm even seeing some men who struggle with it as well.
Mhm.
So are there any companies out there or any guns that you think do it right in terms of being not necessarily just for women, but ideal for women as far as handguns are concerned?
So I would say the Smith and Wesson M&P Shield Easy,
Hmm.
either in 380 or 9, that gun has really kind of changed the industry.
Okay.
Because up until that point, a lot of people were just like, oh, well, you can't rack the slide. Like, no big deal. Here's a revolver. And it annoyed me to no end, because if they don't have the hand strength to rack a slide, which, believe it or not, ladies, like you do have the hand strength, it's more technique than anything. But if they don't have that strength, what makes you think that they are, going to shoot a 38 special, which is typical, the typical caliber of a revolver, and they're usually fairly small because they're used for concealed carry. So what makes you think that they're going to be able to handle the recoil of that gun?
This is true. This is true. So you are a proponent of the Smith and Wesson. Was it the Shield 3
It's
or Easy?
Yes, and it is amazing. So the slide is extremely easy to rack. The magazine, it has like a little assist on the side that you would typically see with 22 LR mags, and it's just super user friendly. The only thing that I don't like about it is it only holds 8 rounds.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a no-go for me.
Yeah. So I hope that they maybe engineer something that might be double stack, or something that might hold more rounds. But other than that, it's the perfect gun. And I've started so many women on the range with that gun, and they just love it. And it's super accurate. It shoots just really well.
Okay. Are there any other guns that stand out to you?
Um,
Handgun wise, we'll walk through the different platforms.
okay.
No, not yet. Keep going. As far as handguns, are there any other handguns that are out there that? So, for instance, let's say I'm a woman, right?
Mhm.
Um, I know I'm pretty and everything, but we're just gonna act like I'm a woman. And
Mhm.
I come to you and I say, I'm looking for a handgun. What handgun? What are, say, top 3 handguns that you would suggest for me, and what calibers?
So I do make suggestions. I make a handful of suggestions, but I don't like what fits really well with my hands or shoots really well. Like for example, the HKVP9. I love the way that that gun felt in my hands. It just did not shoot well for me.
Okay.
I didn't shoot it as accurately as I could a Glock.
Are we talking
And
about the full size one or the SK?
the
Okay.
full size. And so I'll make recommendations on guns that I think are reliable, because we know that there's a lot of junk out there. But then I'll tell them, okay, well, go to a gun store, feel these guns, see how it feels in your hand. Even if it feels great in your hand, see if there's a gun range that has that gun available where you can rent it out and try it out.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's typically my go-to as well. A lot of people don't like to do that though because it's so much involved. They want you to tell them the holy grail, like
Oh
what is
yeah.
what is the absolute best gun, and they just want to go and buy that. And then when you tell them, oh, there isn't one, or you need to gonna go shoot and figure it out, and you
Hmm.
go, I don't want to do that. Um, so let's talk rifles. Um, According to some people, like Joe Biden, he thinks just get a double barrel shotgun, put it out the window, and then blast. From a rifle standpoint, what are your thoughts on women utilizing rifles versus, say, a handgun? And if so, what type of rifle or pistols?
I'm all for it. I don't think that women are less capable than, of using a rifle. If anything, I would say that you're going to use, if you're ever in, self-defense situation, you're going to use your handgun to get to your rifle.
Okay.
And even if it is, like a pistol platform, like the one that you carry around, I think that that's completely fine as well.
What about shotguns?
So shotguns, so that's like that. I've seen actually a lot of people within the last couple of months, they've been buying shotguns because the biggest thing is they think that, the noise that it makes, that that's going to deter somebody who breaks into their house and then they don't have to shoot them. It is the most, recognized sound, I think, in the world, but I don't think that they're going to hear that. And I don't know. I'm not against the shotgun. I would say any gun is better than not having a gun. And regardless if you're using birdshot, it's probably not going to put them down as quickly. It's going to hurt them. But yeah, I would recommend literally like any gun. Any gun is better than no gun.
Gotcha. So when you're training women, what are some of the kind of persistent issues that women tend to have, if at all? Maybe there's the same shit that every other man encounters as well. What are some of the unique kind of issues that women have when you're training them? Because I've noticed certain things about women in terms of the positive. Like I've noticed that women tend to shoot more accurately. Mm-hmm. They may not be able to shoot. I'm going to say not be able to, but they may not shoot as fast. But they tend to do a better job of pretty much bullseye shooting.
Yeah.
From my experience. What has your experience been like in that regard?
No, I completely agree. So, hands down, women definitely shoot better than men. And maybe it's just because guys.
Okay. Let's rewind a little bit.
It always happens though. Every time I bring
you gotta be specific here, because you can't just make a blanket statement.
No, I'm not. So I think
we gotta break it down. We're gonna break it down. All right. Let's talk accuracy, just in terms of bullseye shooting, right? Because there are different styles.
Yes.
I would say women are better, generally speaking, from the start, better bullseye shooters.
And I agree with that.
Like you take a new guy, you take a guy who's never shot, you take a woman who's never shot, give him a couple hours of instruction. I think the woman's gonna pretty much be stacking holes on top. So I'll give you that. Now, where else do you think women are better shooters?
I think that they're just as capable of shooting, consecutive shots and quickly as men. One of the things that I even struggle with is like absorbing that recoil to get back on my target a little bit quicker. And in that case, I think you need more upper body strength.
See, that's why I disagreed with you initially.
That's where you disagree with me?
Well, no, that's why I disagreed with you when you said women tend to be.
Oh, yeah. So that would probably be, physically, I think that would be the only disadvantage that women have. Okay.
Yeah, I give you that, because shooting is definitely a combination of physical and technique. Mm-hmm. You can typically overcome the physical with some technique, which is why I'm such a big advocate for firearms with respect to self-defense, because they are easy. I always say it, shooting a gun in self-defense is easy. Shooting a gun in self-defense very well is hard.
Yeah.
And so for me, but the gun is such an easy level of entry for people from a self-defense standpoint. It's incredibly effective. It's easy to use and simple. And so that's why I advocate for firearms. At the same time, like you pointed out, when it comes to a kind of more advanced levels of shooting, that's where you start to kind of get a divide in terms of, differences in physicality, eyesight, all types of things. Like Jerry Mitchell, for instance, he has the hands of gorillas.
Yeah, I know, insane.
So in terms of managing recoil, he's going to do a much better job of managing recoil than I would. Yeah. Hands are massive, and I got these hobbit hands. But then and same thing with shooting fast. I mean, let's just not talk about Germans. He's just a freak of nature. But, from a shooting fast standpoint, I still going to control recoil a lot better than say the majority of women who are shooting, just because of my physical strength and my ability to manage that recoil versus them. So I agree with you and I disagree with you on your initial statement about women being better shooters than men, but y'all love to say that about everything.
I'm just saying, in a class, like a basic pistol class, women always do better than the men from start to finish.
Do not agree with you. And the only reason I say that is because I'm sure you have encountered, I'll give more credibility to your statement only because I'm sure you've been in more classes and taught more classes.
No, I've taught like thousands of people at this point.
Yes, I know, but my arrogance is still going to chime in and say, I still don't agree with you. And the reason I say that is because the classes that I have been to, that has not been the case. They haven't been terrible. They just haven't.
I would imagine that your classes are probably a little bit more advanced. I'm talking about like basic pistol classes.
That's what I'm talking about.
Interesting.
I'm talking about my basic pistol classes that I've been to. Because for me, when it comes to training, I'm all over the board. So one day I can be shooting out to a mile, and then the next day I'm doing basic pistol training. And the reason I do that is because my goal is to chronologize as much training in video form as possible, just so that there's a number of entry points for people too. Because I'm really big on training. I think everyone should train. I don't think it should be mandated, but I think everybody should get out and get training if you own a firearm. But sometimes people just don't know where to start. They don't know who to look for. They don't know who trains, who doesn't. So I'm in a unique position where I can go to these different types of courses. And so I want to be able to put that out there so they can either learn on a minimal level based on what's in the video, or say, oh shit, I didn't know about this guy or that company, and let me go there and do that, and so forth and so on. So that's why I have such a wide array of different types of training that I do that stems from super advanced to like entry level. And for me, I'm not saying there's this massive like Grand Canyon gap in ability, but generally speaking, I can't agree with the notion that the women tend to have more of they tend to be better.
All right, we're not going to win this. What's your next question?
I'm just saying. But like I said, I have to give you some, you have trained more classes than I have, trained more people than I have. So I'll give you that. So we'll defer to your expertise.
Okay, thank you.
So from that perspective, how does your ability to shoot, if at all, how does that affect your dating life? Because a lot of men carry their pride in their ability to take a girl to the range and show her how to shoot for the first time. So how was that? How's that been for you?
So I don't really care if a guy, I've dated guys that like only had one gun and it was for protection. They barely shot and I was a much better shot, than they were. And I don't mind that. I'm just like, okay, don't worry. I'll sleep closest to the door. I got us.
All right. Okay. So about that. So you've already taken it up in your mind when you're dating a guy like that, you hear that bump in the night and you two are in the same house together. You're going to be the one that's going to have to get up and go figure out what's going on. Is that what you're saying?
No, he can go and figure it out, but I'll have his back.
But you're the better shooter.
Yeah. Well, no, but I'm not going to go and investigate.
That's you don't think that's sexist?
I don't think I would go and investigate regardless. I would just probably stay in my room and hope that they leave. Gotcha.
It's funny. Actually, I'm the same way. If I hear a bump in the night, I'm not coming to look for you. No, me neither.
Because I live by myself, so there's nothing in my house that I'm going to, risk my life for to save.
Yeah. Now let's flip the script a little bit. Let's say you had kids who slept in another room and so forth, and y'all two were in bed. Then what?
I'm going to go first.
Is this because of your mother instinct or because you're the better shooter?
I would say both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I give you that. And so have you been in a situation before where a guy didn't realize what you did and who you were and was like, hey, I want to take you to a date on the gun range? And has that ever happened?
That hasn't happened. So they typically know that I'm in the gun industry, but It has like I've gone to a few ranges, and typically when I go to the range, like I do know most of the people, you know, at gun stores, ranges, and stuff like that. But anytime I've gone to a new range and they didn't know who I was, I've noticed that
Are you telling? I'm trying to understand. Are you telling me you only date people you meet at the range?
no, I'm just saying when I go to the range, whether it's with a guy or by myself.
Okay, so basically he'll know instantly.
No, well, okay, backtrack. So I'm going to the range.
Uh-huh.
I'm with my, you know, with other people, by myself, whatever. The range safety officer always dumps down the safety rules. Just, you know, assume
No. Okay,
I don't know what
my
I'm
bad,
doing.
my bad. I think you didn't understand my question initially. That's why
So
I think.
you're saying I should go to the range on a date, and then this guy's like, okay, babe, this is what you do. And I'm like, okay. And then I just like hurry up and, you know, shoot a bunch of bullseyes.
No, that's not what I was saying at all. No, what I was getting at, what I was saying was, I mean, it's close. So I'm saying, have you ever encountered situations? So you start dating this guy, and you said, generally speaking, they already know who you are. But so we kind of, this question's kind of pointless. But I'm going to ask it anyway again. And if they didn't know who you were, have you ever been in a situation where a guy did not know who you were, what you did, and then wanted to go to the range with you, thinking that he was going to show you how to shoot?
No, but I've had men in my presence that start talking about guns and they have no idea that I'm in the gun industry. And then I, you know, add on to the conversation or just kind of, you know, every now and then like slightly correct them. And they're just like looking like, okay, who is this girl? Like, how does she know so much about guns?
So, okay, so on a deeper level, when you encounter that, are you offended? Does that bother you? What?
No, I think it doesn't bother me at all. I think it's funny. I've even just recently, I was teaching a private class and we were at the range and this guy was looking for a cleaning kit and he went with like the, you know, Real Avid brand. And I was like, yeah, it's a good brand. And the guy's like, oh, you shoot too? And I was like, yeah, I shoot too. And then my student stuck up for me. He's like, she's actually teaching me. And he's like, oh, wow, you're an instructor, you know, so I'll encounter stuff like that. And in that case, I guess maybe I get a little offended because it's just, you know, I think it's 2020 and it's not unheard of for women to be in industries that typically, you know, are
Yeah,
dominated by men.
I get that. I think to a certain degree, I think you and I have a unique perspective in that since we're in the industry, we
Mhm.
probably see it a lot more. But I think based on a history of, you know, just the idea of firearm ownership and it being very male centric, I think there's still just a lot of people who just don't really encounter a lot of girls who shoot. I mean,
Yeah.
and like really shoot, not like I got a pink 22 in my purse or something like that, but like
Yeah.
they shoot. So I think that's still, even today, unfortunately, I think it's still very foreign.
It
Um,
is.
you know, and like you pointed out earlier, it has picked up quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit. But it's definitely, you know, there's a long way to go
Absolutely.
in regards to that. So let's go to another topic. Uh, you being a woman in the influencer space, because we are living in the age of the influencer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Along that last, Lord knows, but we are in this space. So, you know, as far you're on Instagram, you're on YouTube, are you on Twitter?
No,
You're on Twitter?
I hate Twitter.
I know, but necessary
I
evil.
know you're all over Twitter, and I'm just like, ugh, I
I mean,
can't.
I'm only all over Twitter when I'm drinking. Um, that's when I start getting.
That's where I guess that's where I screwed up.
Yeah, you got. Yeah, I use Twitter as my drinking outlet. Like when I'm not doing anything, but I'm drinking. Yeah, that's what I'll do. But you know, there was this time period. Like when I first got into the industry, um, the idea of female ownership is high female ownership. Wow. The idea of female firearm ownership was highly sexualized.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was basically, you know, put a girl in a bikini, put a gun in her hand, and call it a day, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of progressed as of lately. There's still elements of that, but now we've kind of gotten into the age of what has been termed the gun bunny, right?
Mhm.
And you have a podcast. Your podcast basically is kind of, your name of the podcast is almost a parody of that.
Yeah.
Um, Give me your thoughts on the idea of the gun bunny, because everybody has an opinion, right? And so tell me, one, what you think a gun bunny is, and two, what's your opinion on them?
Okay. So I think that a gun bunny is somebody who uses their sexuality to get ahead. They're typically dressed half naked. Um, Usually they don't know how to operate a gun, but there are quite a few that do know how to operate a gun well.
Mm-hmm.
But they're still, I feel like they're taking the easy way out, the easy route, I guess, and just
You
kind
mean
of,
you know how to operate and shoot a gun?
yeah. No, do I?
No, no, I'm saying, like, so if you had a girl who was utilizing her sexuality
Uh-huh.
in the gun space, but also could shoot and could operate a gun, would
Yeah.
you still consider that the easy way out?
Yes.
Okay, why?
Because so obviously people are going to pay attention if somebody's wearing a bikini and they're shooting a gun versus somebody who's wearing a turtleneck. And, it's just, even as you're scrolling through like Instagram, obviously you're going to stop and take a second look.
You
So
don't.
I think that it's definitely a lot more eye grabbing, whether it's effective or not, effective marketing. I don't think that it is. I think people are typically, focused on the female as opposed to like what she's shooting.
Mhm.
But it is still, it's still kind of a taking the easy road.
Would you? I think you're biased. Here's
Okay, why?
I think you're biased because you're not attracted to women. As a man, and I don't ever apologize for being one, I'm attracted to women inherently. So you take a woman who is attractive and utilizes her sexuality within reason, right? I don't need you
Mhm.
running around the woods butt naked with an AK. But if you want to leverage aspects of your sexuality, I want to change that. I want to say sexuality just seems so grotesque. Let's say your sexiness, right?
Mhm.
You want to leverage some of your sexiness, but then you also can operate a firearm and you can shoot. I don't generally have a problem with that. Now, on the flip side, the whole I don't know shit about guns and I'm just gonna stand here, be sexy, and carry a gun. That's so cringe-inducing to me in a lot of ways that I don't really like. The sexiness is lost.
Mhm.
If that makes any sense.
It does. Um, so I'm not like I don't want to hate on women,
Mhm.
especially women that are in the gun industry. I feel like we should all stick together. But I think that if anything, it's more detrimental than anything. I get it. If you're, like if I saw a guy that was like topless shooting a gun, yeah, it's better to look at to a degree, but think about all of the women in the industry that have worked really hard to kind of change that image of females in the industry. And then there's women that just come around and pretty much just trample on everything that we've worked hard for. I also think that it kind of discourages more women to get involved in the firearms industry because they see, these like half naked, models shooting guns. And they're like, well, is that what I have to be like in order to, get into guns?
Well, okay, so you don't think that's a personal thing?
I don't think it's a personal thing.
Well, think about it. So if I'm an individual and I'm looking at the space, let's take, for instance, let's take my background.
Hmm.
I didn't know anything about guns. I was very new to guns, and everything that I saw in terms of the personalities who were out there involved in firearms were kind of a certain way that I didn't fit. And there were backgrounds that I didn't have. So what I did and I said was, you know what? I'm just going to do it the way I want to do it. If people follow, they follow. If they don't, they don't. And ironically enough, that's exactly what you did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I'm kind of like, I think it's more personal because I get what you're saying. I agree with you to an extent. I agree with you in the notion that, yeah, it could seem a little daunting. Like if I'm pretty new to firearms and I'm scrolling through and I'm just seeing all of these Instagram gun bunnies, I'm probably going to be like, oh, that's not really me. Is that what I have to do? But I think there's also some level of kind of, I don't want to say personal accountability, but just take some initiative on your own and say, okay, cool. I'm going to do what I want to do because I like doing this. I'm going to do it my way. And if people follow, they follow. If they don't, they don't. Um, I don't.
So I'm going to turn it around a little
Okay.
bit on you. So, I'm like, let's say, Black people and guns.
Mhm.
And there's just like with women, there's not a ton of Black people in the industry.
Mhm.
It's predominantly, typical male beards, kind of chubby, whatever. And um, so I'm thinking of a few certain people that are, African American, and they record videos where they're just, being extremely like unsafe with guns or just acting super ghetto. And do you think that they're representing, you know, your culture?
Well, it depends because it may be an element of that aspect of firearm ownership. So, for instance, like you mentioned, like them kind of acting a certain way and acting ghetto, which I think the synonym to that would be in a white space would be what, acting like a redneck, I guess. Would
Mhm.
redneck or
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah. No, I would say probably redneck.
exactly. So you have different facets in a gun community. So you have that kind of like redneck, missing teeth, shooting cans, kind of
Hmm.
caricature. And then on the flip side, from a Black perspective, you kind of get that ghetto, crazy stuff as well. But then you also, on the flip side of both of those, you have elements that are not like that,
Hmm.
right? And then you have that on the white side, and you have that on the Black side, and just in general, right? So I think they exist, they're there, and they're necessary because there are a lot of people who are like that, and they have really big followings. And in my mind, I'm like, get it how you live. Now, I'm not really big. I'm not a fan of the unsafe aspect of things.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I draw the line
Yeah.
because that can get people hurt.
Yeah.
So that I can't get down with the unsafe handling of firearms and in a very kind of blatant way. Um, and so I guess what you're trying to demonstrate to me is that the
I'm
caricature, that caricature of the ghetto gun wielding Black
or
guy
the stereotype.
is,
Like
is
I'm trying
pertinent.
to break down the stereotype, just like you're trying to break down a stereotype.
Yeah. Um, I agree with you, and then I don't.
Well,
Um,
what else is new?
well, because I mean, I try not to live in absolutes in a way that because there's a lot of truth to what you're saying, right? That they are largely speaking, you're going to look at them as a negative stereotype.
Yeah.
And so I came in the industry saying that I wanted to change the perspective of Black gun ownership in America, the way that the other side saw it, right? Because they've tried to pigeonhole the idea of Black gun ownership into the very caricature in which you described.
Hmm.
So that much I do agree with you on. And I guess for me, because I'm kind of, my mentality, my personality is kind of like, whatever, I'm going to do what I do. I'm going to make it work regardless. I think that's why I kind of have a more of a dismissive kind of approach to the idea of how much of an effect that image is having on, say, my image as a Black man. So that's why I keep saying, that's why I was like, I agree with you, but then I don't. I do think it's still personal, because I could see that and say, I don't want any parts of that. And I'm going to distance myself from that. And I did do that. I did that growing up. Because remember, I told you, my mindset was the only people who had guns were police or criminals, right?
Hmm.
So when I got into the industry, I was like, before I got into the industry, for me, I thought, I'm just going to stay away from guns because I don't want anybody to think I'm a criminal, right? So there's a little bit more of that truth that you pointed out where, okay, I wanted to stay away because I didn't want to be seen a certain type of way because that's been the pervasive view of, of, that people have of Black gun ownership at that time. But at the same time, I inevitably decided that, yeah, sure, I want to buck that. And I don't think it's a good thing. However, there's a fine line. I think not so much a fine line, but I think the line's a little bit blurred in the sense of the caricature aspect of it. As long as it's safe and it's not pushing anything illegal, I don't really have a problem with it. That may not be my thing, right? It may not be my form of entertainment because I kind of call it tactical slapstick.
Hmm.
It may not be my thing, but I don't really concern myself with it. Now, the kind of illegal portrayal or the unsafe, that's where I have a really big problem because I do believe that is just bad all the way around because it has real world consequences as a result. But that's interesting. It's interesting. I think you have a point. I just don't know if I necessarily completely agree with it.
So the only reason why I disagree that it's personal
Uh-huh.
is because I am trying to get more women involved
Okay.
and bring them, on the other side. And so I guess it's just,
I see. I think that's where, because I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what you're saying is you're trying to get more women involved, but the women are going to be very apprehensive about becoming a part of the gun culture if they think all it is a bunch of women in bikinis shooting guns.
mhm.
Right. Okay. And I agree with you, and I can agree with you on that. I just have I have a rather rebellious personality, so my mind also just automatically goes to, oh, that's fine. I'm going to do it my way. So that's why I think I'm kind of a little bit dismissive of that kind of mindset a little bit. Not that it's wrong. I don't know. Do you think that that's really preventing a lot of women from wanting to be a part of the gun community? That's
I
just like
kind of
the
think
character.
so. I think that women want to identify with like other regular women that might be, kind of overweight or, just like they have regular day jobs or I don't know. I think that you can always relate to somebody who is more like you as opposed to what you see, in magazines or on Instagram or any of that stuff.
Well, wouldn't, if you go out there as a regular person and start putting out your own content, owning your own firearms in a way that you choose to, wouldn't that then draw those type of people to you? Because I would think, like, the people who have the kind of what I call slapstick tactical kind of
Mhm.
content, we don't necessarily have the same audience. Like, our audiences are different. Um, so I don't, I think people will tend to gravitate to what they want to see, just
Mhm.
because the gun industry is just so multifaceted that, um, I think there's a lot of different type of viewpoints from the pro gun side, um, and different ways of kind of engaging in the enthusiasm for firearms that, I may like this, but then I also might like this, or may not like that at all. So I'll consume this content, not that content from that person.
Mhm.
Um, I do see something that's problematic from the standpoint of utilizing the imagery from what I call slapstick tactical, um, by the other side, and kind of utilizing that imagery to kind of demonize the gun industry in a way, or the
Mhm.
gun community in a way, because it's kind of like, if you don't have much of a context behind it, and you just see like some of the videos that are out there that are kind of crazy, and you don't have really any context, and you're not really into firearms, you say, see, this is what we're talking about. This is the problem. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, I can see that. But here's the thing: there's a lot of different people, but I get it. um, so yeah, I can see how that can become problematic from that standpoint.
Okay, good.
I mean, that doesn't mean I agree with you or anything. God forbid I agree with you on anything.
I know, God forbid.
And the world will come to an end. So for you, I'm gonna ask a question that bugs me the most. What is actually, no, I'm not gonna do that. Yes, I am. Favorite platform?
I
Handgun,
always hate.
AR, huh?
Well, at least you're not going to be like, "What's your favorite gun?" But
No,
I guess,
yeah, I can't. I'm not gonna do that to you because it's kind of evil. People don't realize how evil that is when you ask somebody who's really into guns.
yeah. So favorite platform I would say is still handguns. That was the first thing that I learned on. It's the most comfortable that I can shoot a handgun all day long. Although recently I did start getting into long distance shooting, and that is a lot of fun because it brings on so many more challenges than just being a good trigger puller.
It's funny you say that because you would think it'd be the opposite, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you're just laying on your belly. You're not
Yeah,
doing anything.
exactly.
Yeah, right. Shooting long distance is yeah, but isn't it addicting?
It is.
Yeah.
It's
I,
so addicting. And then the minute you hit, like, let's say, I shoot at a mile. The
okay.
minute that I hit that mile target, then I'm like, what's next?
Wait, you shot at a mile?
Yeah.
How many rounds did it take you to do it?
So actually, you're going to be impressed. This happened in Texas because in Colorado, they don't have a range that exceeds, I think, I don't know, 1,000 yards. And my girlfriend, she let me use her gun. So we had literally like 30 minutes to set everything up. zero the gun in, and then take the hits. But it took me 4 shots before I hit that mile.
What caliber are you shooting?
300 Win Mag.
Oh, you're cheating.
Okay.
You're cheating. It took me several
That
matches
was
to hit my
that
mark.
was the only gun that I had available.
I'm just trying to make myself feel better because it took me way more than that. I think I was shooting 224 Valkyrie, and this was in Teasdale, Utah. The winds were insane. Like literally, they would just, when you start shooting out to that distance and you see what winds do to a round, it starts to
Yeah.
kind of boggle your mind a little bit. Because we were dealing, like when you have 30 miles going this way, 20 miles going that way, and then all the way down. So literally, I would take a shot. I was using a gas gun. We're using bolt.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, they're clearly like what gas gun is chambered in. But yes, I was shooting, and I was just like literally just watching the bullet. No, not literally watching it, but I can tell like the bullet's just dancing all the way down there.
Yeah.
And then, or it'd be clear, clear, clear. And then right when it gets to the target, gust of wind comes in, knocks the bullet to the left. And I'm like, oh, come on.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, to make you feel better, it wasn't windy when I shot my mile.
Oh, you don't have to try to. Ego, I have enough for both of us. Don't worry. Don't worry. But so hitting that shot, what was the feeling like? Because a lot of people they can't conceptualize shooting out to a mile. Most people haven't shot past 50 yards, much less a mile. What was that like for you?
So the mile, I don't know, it wasn't really like life-changing. Right before that, the longest that I shot was at 630 yards.
Okay.
And I just remember being like just super impressed. And I could even hear the rounds like hit the steel every time and it was just so just satisfying. It was just, and it's incredible that, it's hard to comprehend that like a round will go that far. That you could actually hit somebody at a mile accurately, take somebody down, I mean, I'm not like trying to like, have that like criminal mindset where I'm like, wow, I could kill somebody at a mile now. But it is kind of just eye-opening.
Gotcha. No, it was the same for me. I remember I actually hit it 4 times, but I hit it. Wait, when you hit your mile shot, you could actually hear the steel?
No, not at a mile. At the 630 yards, I could.
Gotcha. See, I was dealing with so much in the way of like the mirage and all the shit.
Yeah.
Does that shit.
What other excuses do you have?
Oh, I got tons of them, baby. But I hit it 4 times, but I thought I hit it once. And we didn't realize it till we actually drove down to the target and noticed that, oh crap, I hit it 4 times. But because I was having such a hard time, I think I was running a 16 times magnification. It was still very hard to see the impact.
Yeah. Did you have a spotter?
I did. Okay. But even then, because with the wind and then just the mirage and all that crap, it just made it really hard to see where my impacts were. And we were utilizing such a small round. We were using 224 Valkyrie. So when we got down there, we're like, oh crap, there's 4 hits here that I didn't realize I had. So
yeah.
So technically you hit it once, I hit it 4 times. But so where do you go from here? What's in the future for Miss Ava?
So right now, well, with everything going on, classes are just insane. Like I don't know, all my classes, the minute I post it sells out. I'm teaching about 5 classes a week. Okay. And I keep telling myself that there's going to be an end in sight and that I can enjoy summer, but so far it doesn't look like that.
I mean, we're in the middle of COVID. What are you going to do anyway?
I know. Well, that is something that kind of makes me feel a little bit better, is a lot of things are closed. So I'm not really missing out on a ton, but it would be nice just to like sit in my backyard, drink a pina colada or something. Like even on my birthday, I've been so busy that I only had 1 drink.
That's
1 drink. And then I was like, all right, back to work, like had dinner with a bunch of people. And then I was like, all right, got to go back to work.
That's utterly
a bunch of things to do.
Yeah, don't do that again. Yeah, it's
well, it was the big 3-4. So what's really to celebrate at that point?
So morbid.
It's all downhill.
Shut up. You're a baby. Funny. So it's safe to say that with COVID, things have spiked for the good, but then also for the bad. No, not for the bad, but just
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say that there's anything that's gun related, it's good because it's, if anything, a lot of these people that were anti-gun previously, they're coming over to the other side, and whether they stick with it or not, but it is our opportunity to, educate them, sort of take away a lot of the like misinformation that they're getting from media and stuff like that. And hopefully there's a chance that we can change their mind and they're going to vote, later on for, for anything pro-gun.
yeah, no, absolutely. And now, before we go, are you getting a lot of new people? I know you deal with a lot of new people, but are you getting a lot of new people who were anti before and are now?
No, it's so before I start class, I always ask people to introduce themselves and then tell me how much firearm experience they have,
Okay.
just so I know kind of like, what I'm dealing with. And every now and then I would have somebody who was kind of anti-gun, who didn't think that they needed a gun, but I've never seen this many people that, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Okay. Well, you got a lot going on and you're everywhere kind of like I am. So
Yeah.
and I'll put all the information down in the description box if you're watching this on YouTube. But for the people who are listening to this and are going to be listening to this, where can they find you?
So I'm on Instagram, Ava Flanell _ AVAFLANEL _. YouTube is Ava Flanell, and Facebook is Elite Firearms and Training. If you guys are in Colorado and you want training, my website's elitefirearmsandtraining.com. And then my podcast is gunfunny.com. Also on social media platforms, and the newest podcast, which is Basic American Podcast, you can just look it up on Instagram, Basic American Podcast.
Sweet. Well, thank you for doing my podcast after I did yours first.
Well, I would have done yours first, but nobody asked.
Shut up.
You also didn't have a podcast, so we'll just give you that.
Very, very, very true. But no, I definitely look forward to having you back on. We didn't have enough time to get to some of the other stories that I wanted to pull out of you. But we'll get there.
Yeah, I know. I was like, there's still so much more that I want to talk about.
No, we'll definitely have you back on so we can. You're going to be a reoccurring guest, so just get used to that. But definitely look forward to the next conversation.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on.
Right now, there's a culture war against the Second Amendment, which is why I need your help spreading our message to counter their message. You can help do this by leaving a comment, sharing this video, and clicking the bell and subscribe button. Let my voice be your voice, and let them know you want to keep America tactical, because the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed wasn't a suggestion, it was a directive. Also, if you're wondering where to purchase your AR-15s are essential, I will not comply, I am the militia, I lost all my guns in a boating accident, and your state-specific Keep America Tactical shirt, click the link next to my head or the link in the description section, or if you're watching this on a mobile device, tap the small triangle on the lower right-hand side of this video and click the link in the description.